I'm just not sure that Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate I've got Brian Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a championship defense. And Mitch, I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you thought you were going to get Zion, that's your bad.
You are now listening to Open Season. Your host, Billy Allen.
Welcome. It's another Tuesday. A little bit chilly out there. Hopefully we can put a little bit of wood on the sports stove, warm things up. Brian and I here from the Somerville studio. We're going to be talking about, are the Bucks the best team in the league? How high can James Harden go? The Nuggets, can they maintain the best defense in the NBA? Can the Lakers flip the switch and actually beat some good teams? And the Raptors, off a very hot streak, are they for real? We're going to touch things in the NFL a little bit too, talk about Lamar Jackson, an upcoming game against the Chiefs, as well as the Pats offense, not looking so good. But we started out by getting to a special caller on the line. You can check him out on NBC Sports Boston. We have Kyle Draper on the line. Kyle, hello. How you doing tonight?
Yo, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, absolutely. I just want to say before we start out, I saw Kyle in the grocery store, and Kyle, honestly, you couldn't have been a cooler guy to me. And you put your things down, and really appreciated you taking a minute, and it's awesome to have you on the show. So thank you for sitting tight with us tonight.
Yeah, no problem, Billy.
Oh, absolutely. So now I want to get into a couple quotes just to start. So Danny Ainge blamed himself for last year. And I guess if there's a blame pie, who do you think is the biggest person that you put blame on? You know, we're having a great year this year, but I think people still are infatuated with last year and what happened. And who do you ultimately blame the most, Kyle, for last year?
I give Kyrie the biggest piece of the blame pie, and here's why. It's not 70% or 80%, but let's say 40, 50%, because Kyrie Irving sort of set the tone for this team last year. There was no sense of urgency from the Celtics. Even he said it himself during the season. You know, it's the regular season. Don't worry. I'll be able to flip the switch, once the playoffs come. And he sort of wanted to be the leader, and he got what he asked for. He was the guy that everybody followed. And then once the playoffs came, they weren't able to flip the switch. And so I think this team didn't have a sense of urgency right from the get-go, 10-10, right out the season, right out the gate. And so I give Kyrie the biggest piece, but Danny Ainge gives it's the regular season. Don't worry, I'll be correct. You had too many guys that thought they were the man, that thought they should be the man.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. You got Terry Rozier, you got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Those guys lead you to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And then when you come in, you bring back Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, two all-stars, two great players. And so you got 7 people in that squad that think, you know what, I should get my touches. And I forget the game it was, Billy. It was in January.
Was it the Orlando game?
It may have been Orlando. It may have been Miami before that. And I watched the several possessions, and it seemed like everybody that touched the ball wanted to take their man one-on-one. Mm-hmm. There was no team, no unity, no ball movement. And from that point on, I said, you know what? Everybody thinks they have the advantage. Everybody thinks that they're the guy. And so I think that was part of it. And Charles Barkley said it at the beginning of last season. Sometimes you need role players. And the Celtics didn't have that many role players. Aaron Baines, maybe Al Horford. But when you talk about their perimeter players, they all thought, they should be the man.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think you had this elevated team that was a little bit younger. You look at Terry Rozier, he thought he was a superstar. He was kind of scary Terry when it was on the road, at least. I mean, he was good at home, but his road splits in the playoffs were terrible. You see how bad he is in Charlotte, and I totally think it was a game of there wasn't that many people that were actually stars, and they kind of all thought they were. I guess to flip the page to this year, What do you think is the biggest thing? So, last year, a lot of guys thought they were stars, and you said that Kyrie was a little bit, kind of 40 to 50% there. Is it as simple as removing Kyrie from the picture? What's the biggest reason why they're 14-5 right now?
Well, everybody will point to, you got Kemba Walker, you don't have Kyrie, you bring in Kemba, and all of a sudden things are improved. But let's give Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum some credit. The level of play that we're seeing from these guys now, we didn't see a year ago. And so they're becoming more aggressive. And I fault them a little bit for what happened last year. They sort of, took a back seat and let Kyrie be the man instead of being aggressive. And Jaylen Brown told me, before the season even began, he said, Kyle, I'm going to just go out there and hoop. It's all about me hooping. And we're seeing that. And so these guys have taken major leaps. And let's not forget, Bill, Gordon Hayward wasn't 100% last season,
right.
Both physically and mentally. Now you see a different Gordon Hayward. I know he's been injured, but now you see a healthy Gordon Hayward when he was out there, a more aggressive Gordon Hayward. So a number of factors. A, Kyrie's gone. B, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have elevated their game and been more aggressive. C, Gordon Hayward. And lastly, Kemba Walker, one area where I'm noticing from him, he is more than willing to let these other guys shine. He's more than willing to let Jason Tatum take more shots or take the biggest shots. Same thing with Jaylen Brown. And so Kemba, I give him a lot of credit too, man. He's come in and fit in perfectly. He's not trying to be the man. He's not talking about being the leader. He's letting the young guys know, hey, I need you to be great, with me. And it's happening so far early this season.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I think there was kind of a big question mark about Kemba, if he could acquiesce because he's taken so many shots over the past few years. I think it was the game against Charlotte where a lot of people thought he was probably going to go out for a 50-point party, and he really was able to sit back to some of the other guys. So I think that question's definitely been answered for us in the early end here. I guess to get back onto Jaylen for a second, he's been great, and I think the big takeaway, you can't take away a whole lot from this Knicks game. They beat the crap out of the Knicks just the other night, but Tatum putting up 30, Jaylen with 28. Do you think that – I think we all agree that Jason Tatum is that guy that's a big – part of your big three moving forward, and he's certainly talented. As far as Jaylen, do you evaluate him as a guy that can be, on the top three? Is he a guy that can score 20 points a game, or is this just kind of a hot streak for him?
No, he's definitely a guy that can score – 20 points a game. I mean, look at what he's done since Gordon Hayward's been out. He sort of assumed that mantle, and he's already averaging 19.2 points per game.
Sure.
It'll be interesting to see, though, when Gordon Hayward comes back, what happens. Because I envision this Celtics team with four guys averaging between 17 and 22, 23 points per game. We talked about this on NBC Sports Boston on one of our shows, the growth that Jaylen has to make. And I think what separates him from Gordon Hayward right now, Gordon Hayward has tremendous playmaking ability also. Not only can Gordon Hayward go out and get his, he can also facilitate and get everybody involved. And I think that's what you're seeing a little bit from Jaylen Brown. Those are the steps that he needs to make. But, when you're looking at it, I mean, you could argue that the Celtics will have a big four this season.
Right.
Once Hayward comes back. And on any given night, one of those guys will lead you in scoring. It doesn't always have to be a Kemba Walker or Jason Tatum. There will be nights, like we saw the other day in New York, where it's going to be Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the young guns leading you. And so I think Jaylen's been tremendous, man. When you talk about most improved players for the Celtics, you could mention Tatum, but you also have to mention Jaylen Brown as well.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. I mean, he's totally lifted up his game. I guess I was just meaning, moving forward, could he be that 20-point scorer? And I think, we definitely got our answer from you. So I'll let you out on this. There's a lot of guys with a great start this year. Who's your Celtics MVP a quarter of the way through the season?
I got to go with Marcus Smart, believe it or not.
And I thought we might get that.
Some people say it's Tatum, Kemba, but Marcus Smart has been playing at such an elite level. And I know the numbers don't say 20 points, 10 assists, but he gives you everything you need. Kemba Walker even said it. Marcus Smart sets the tone for this team defensively. And so you have guys that can score, the Tatums, the Browns, the Haywards, but do you have a guy that does what Marcus Smart does? And so that's why I think he's sort of the most irreplaceable player, because you can get points from other guys. You know, if Gordon Hayward goes down, Jaylen Brown steps up. If Kemba goes down, Tatum steps up. If Marcus Smart goes down, and we'll have to see what happens with this injury, you know, who's that defensive quarterback, that defensive motivator out there? And so I think Marcus Smart has been playing. He mentioned it a couple weeks ago. He says he's playing at an all-time high right now, and I agree.
Yeah, definitely a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. And we appreciate you calling in tonight and hanging out with us a little bit, Kyle. Great to meet you in person and great to get you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Billy. We'll have to do it again soon, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, take care. Stay warm tonight.
All right, thanks, my man.
Of course. So I think we just had another one ringing through there.
Yep.
And I think that might actually be Brian Robb, who we're trying to bring on from Boston Sports Journal. So I will just shoot him a quick text.
Go for it. I can run some score updates.
Sorry there for the unprofessionalism. But a great sit-in with Kyle. You know, like I said, he was
awesome.
He's one of those guys who it seems like everybody that I told that he was going to be on the program, everybody goes, he's a really nice guy. You know, I think it's pretty apparent. Like I said, when I met him, literally put his groceries down to talk for a few minutes to me. And I think he gave us a lot of great color. He's so close to the team.
Absolutely. Yeah, pretty unfiltered, a pretty honest take, I think, for somebody that, you know, kind of has that. He's media, but kind of
talking about Tatum, how Tatum said, you know, he just had to ball. I thought that was great too, because we really have seen all these guys elevate themselves. Before the season, there were so many people that said, well, you know, Tatum's got to take a leap. Hey, is this B-Rob?
It is.
Hey, B-Rob, how you doing?
Good, man. How's it going?
Hey, doing great. We appreciate you taking a minute, and we've got Brian Robb on the line right now from Boston Sports Journal and 98.5. And apologies there, B-Rob. We were actually on with another one. We don't have the best phones over here. You know, not quite like 98.5 yet over here. So, but
no worries at all, man. Happy to be on.
Well, we're happy to have you. So we were just talking a little bit about kind of the early season, and you know, we're talking about certain MVP candidates. I think the big thing that I wanted to hear from you is, I know you were putting out some commentary on Gordon Hayward's injury, and it seems like things are pretty much on track for a December 18th or so. You know, it seems like he's pretty much on track coming back, and you know, kind of on plan so far for coming back from that broken hand.
Yeah, no, he obviously had the surgery, I think, 3 weeks ago yesterday, but as early as last week, he was already getting some shots up during practice. Now that obviously doesn't mean much when you know, it's your dominant hand is the one that's healthy. But at the same time, you know, there clearly hasn't been any setbacks to this point, and he's starting to ramp up contact now, which is a telltale sign of being like, okay, he's testing it, and it's getting closer to be getting ready here. And the good news for him and his recovery is that the Celtics are pretty much home here for the next 2 weeks. So there's going to be a bunch of practices that he can actually test it on and get in some live action with his teammates. And so, you know, like, again, the original timetable was 6 weeks, but it would not surprise me at all to see him, you know, ahead of that December 18th date you mentioned, just with, you know, if things go well in the next week or two here.
Yeah, and that would obviously be great, but I think it does bring about some question marks. It seems like Brad's always had a little bit of issues when he's had that extra talent, and I think people are already starting to look ahead to how they're going to integrate Hayward back into this team. What type of challenges do you see, and I guess, you know, who do you think is going to have to give up the most with a return of Hayward back to the lineup?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting since we didn't see, you know, even Jaylen Brown was out for a bit, so that original starting five, even before Hayward went down, only played together, I think, for 3 games, which is kind of crazy to think. given how far into the season we are here. But at this point, the offense has kind of taken a dive here in the last, 3 weeks. I think that West Coast trip bill is bad. It's been up and down in the last couple of weeks too. So I expect, Jaylen Brown is probably an easy source of where some of that offense is going to come from, or some of those shots, I should say. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because this offense has been able to been a little bit stagnant at times, and even though certain guys are putting up big numbers on different nights, it hasn't been consistent, at least with either group, outside of some bright spots for Tatum, Kemba, Jaylen Brown, and even Brad Wanamaker at times. So I think you're going to see Hayward coming in the fold is actually going to help things. I don't think the too much talent issue is going to be as much of a problem on this team compared to the last team, because everyone just seems to know their role more in this team. Everyone, the ball is moving more. Hayward's obviously in far better condition than he was last year. So you put it all together, and just having another shooter on the floor at all times is something this team could absolutely use more of right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and it'll certainly add to the bench. Do you think that this team needs some type of bench upgrade, B-Rob? Do you think, are you set with this bench, or do you think they could stand to improve it a bit?
No question. I think they definitely could use it.
And I guess
you just look at what the rookies on this. I mean, look at the rookies on this roster right now. I mean, Grant Williams is playing great D, but Carson Edwards can't hit a shot. Grant can't hit a three, obviously, and that's not going to work when you get into, if they actually plan on making a deep run in the East of this group. I think they need, another reliable guy they can count on back there.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of go at that, the center spot has certainly had its tweaks. You've had Cantor, Williams, Tice playing some pretty good minutes, and Cantor and Tice actually have a really good per minute. They've actually really churned out a pretty good outtake, but it's almost like all those guys are maybe number 2 or number 3 options. How do you see the center situation shaking out? Do you think they move a guy maybe like Smart or Jaylen for somebody like Steven Adams or Capella? Is Robert Williams worth waiting for? How do you kind of see the situation evolving this year, B-Rob?
It's a great question. I think before the season, moving one of those guys was certainly going to be on the table, I think, for the long term. Mm-hmm. I'd be shocked if anyone in that top 5 group of, the Hayward, Kemba, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Smart, I would be shocked if any of those guys get moved. I think what you're going to see is a move on the edges. I think they maybe trade one of their excess centers with a draft pick. And I'm not even sure they need necessarily another big though. I think they just need another reliable player off the bench.
Okay.
Just someone that Brad Stevens can count on. Maybe someone who can spread the floor, just another three-point shooter. Since obviously outside of Brad Wanamaker, there was really anyone on the bench that can be counted on that front. And to be honest, they're going to be downsizing a lot anyway, I think, once the crunch time rolls around in these games. So, why, if you're going to go with your best 5 guys anyway, why spend too much on the center when you can just get, maybe just another guy who can play 20, 25 minutes a night and be a versatile player. So who that guy is going to be the question. It's probably going to depend a lot on what teams fall out of the picture in both conferences the next month or two. But I think, these guys have shown early that they're, good enough to compete in the East, and it's, they're short on depth right now. So if Danny Ainge wants to make a run at it, I think he's going to have to, bolster the bench a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like they're a little bit down. So if you kind of look at like the upper echelon of the NBA, you're probably looking at the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, and then I feel like the Celtics are that next level down. In order to get to that level to compete with, be on the same level with the Clippers, is there anything in your mind that they could do this year, or maybe not even get to the level of the Clippers, but just to improve a little bit more to bolster themselves for a run?
Yeah, it's going to be, you're not going to be able to, the big splashy move is not out there, I think, this year, just because, the guys that could give you that kind of upgrade, like a Bradley Beal type, they're just not available now. Like, he's not going anywhere after signing that extension. a guy like, Karl Anthony Towns isn't going anywhere. The Wolves are playing well, and he's under contract for a few more years. So that next, we saw so much star movement in the last couple of years. That really isn't going to happen this year. So I think this year it's just going to be everyone's going to have to play to their potential. And then on top of that, you add another, wing/shooter to make sure that, Brad Stevens doesn't have to rely on, like, Carson Edwards in these games.
That would be
a shooting spark. So that's the kind of player that I think they're going to get. And you have you got some extra draft picks that you can deal there. And, the East is pretty wide open, I feel like. I mean, the Bucks are the clear-cut number one, but beyond that, everyone, it's fair game. And so I think the Celtics, their top priority will probably just be like, hey, we'd love to see if anything can happen in the finals, but first things first, we have to give ourselves a chance to get out of the East.
Yeah.
And
I guess to hit on that, this is a question I wanted to ask you about the Bucks. It seems like, it seems like Giannis is playing at a better than MVP level that he was at last year. But aside from that, they have Chris Middleton. They rely on a lot of minutes from Brook Lopez and from Bledsoe. I don't really see why they're so good. Can you explain? Can you kind of tell me why are they 17-3? Are they just playing all tomato cans? I mean, like, how much? I guess they're the number one by far in the East, but I mean, how far ahead of everybody else do you think they are in the East?
I think they have a really good system. Like, Budenholzer has them playing unselfishly with a lot of shooters around Giannis. Giannis keeps getting better. But yeah, it's been a mix of tomato cans, but I mean, they have a record. Even Middleton's been out for a while, too, which makes it even more impressive. But this is what they do. They're healthy. They run their system well. They defend the rim well, and they know what they're trying to do well on both ends of the floor. Now, how that translates into the playoffs, you're playing the same team 7 times. Like, that's the question. I don't like the fact that they lost Brogdon, because I thought he was kind of their third best player. For most of last year, and they replaced him with nothing, essentially. So I think that's not going to really show until the postseason, just how much that kind of a loss hurts. But for now, I think given their depth and just the fact that Giannis is looking like an MVP again, like, they're going to win 60-plus games and be the clear-cut number one in the East.
Yeah, I think so, too. It seems like they're kind of built to just do really well. It's almost like Budenholzer is kind of taking that Hawks team over to the Bucks, where they just do it incredibly well in the regular season, and I'm not so sure how good they're going to be in the playoffs, but we'll see. Hey, I guess the last thing here, we'll let you go on this, B-Rob. Kevin Garnett said that Kyrie today, he said that he didn't have the cojones to play in Boston. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with KG too much there, right? I mean, it's that whole situation, as it was unfolding, it seemed like a situation where, any guy who's super competitive probably wouldn't want to leave a team on that note, the way things ended.
Right.
Like, KG, like, I think, like you said, like, KG wouldn't have done that. I don't think Paul Pierce would have done that. There's probably a number of guys around the league who just competitive juices wouldn't let him walk out on that note, but Kyrie clearly had thrown in the towel in that series.
Yeah.
And it was clear cut at that point that he was checked out, and whether, the fact that he couldn't live up to the hype that he gave himself all year long, he'd already lost a lot of the fan base already heading into that postseason. I feel like people were kind of done with him. Yeah. And then he obviously couldn't face the music there. So I think, again, a lot of stuff went into that, but there's no question that an inability to face adversity definitely played a big part there, I feel like, with Kyrie's Boston tenure.
Well, hey, B-Rob, we definitely appreciate you calling in and spending a little bit of time with us. And stay warm tonight. And that's B-Rob from Boston Sports Journal. You can also catch him on 98.5, giving us the Celtics beat and the latest there. And it seems like we also have seems like there's also an injury for Marcus Smart. Seems like he's battling an oblique injury as well. Is there any update on that?
Oh, shit.
No. Is there any update on that? Never mind. We're transitioning. So anyway, so great stuff out of both those guys. I think we got more Celtic stuff than we probably fit in the past couple weeks here because we've been pretty NFL heavy. But a lot of good things with the Celtics. And Gordon Hayward, I think the biggest thing out of that, Gordon Hayward looks like he's going to be back within that 6-week frame. I think the original surgery, the injury happened the 9th. The surgery was on the 11th. And then they were saying that he was probably going to be 6 weeks away from there. Sounds like he's already practicing with somewhat contact, like they're kind of calling it a hybrid type practice. And we've got one ringing through here. Hi, you're on with Open Season.
Oh, hi. This is Ryan from Quincy.
Hey, Ryan, what's going on, my friend? How you doing tonight?
Hey, not much. Pretty well. Love the Celtics talk so far. I just wanted to see if I could talk about last Sunday night's game with the Patriots.
Oh, absolutely. Let's turn the tables. What do you got?
Yeah, so it's just interesting how even at 10-2, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the commentary this week from Shannon Sharp, Rex Ryan, the Max Kellermans of the world, how it almost seems like the sky in New England is falling down, where I just wanted to bring up some interesting points how even though the game was on the road in Houston, the Texans, it's pretty much their Super Bowl. You got the Patriots with a lot of players battling the flu. And even though Brandon Bolden doesn't come down with that perfect executed kick by Jake Bailey on the end there, you're looking at the Patriots with a potential chance of going up and winning that game despite, all the issues at wide receiver that they had so far. But they still came away with more total yards, more first downs, and more time possession than the Texans in that game. So just wanted to assess your overall understanding of how the Patriots played that night despite the loss and how the team is sitting so far at this point in the season.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm glad you bring a rosy glow to the program. I remember the last time you were on, you were talking to us about how you thought that the Pats were going to go undefeated and that Brady was going to go off into the sunset. So now that those things haven't happened, definitely interested to hear your thoughts on that. But as far as the game on Sunday, I think you're totally right. When they pull back a lot of the stats, there was a lot of good to be seen there. The Patriots really did dominate the time of possession. They dominated the yards, and it kind of came down to execution. I think Brady threw a terrible interception. You keep getting this, from the N'Keal Harry interception, people blaming N'Keal Harry. I thought that was an absolutely terrible interception personally, and I thought that Brady pretty much threw it right to the guys. So you're already down out of the gate. Brady's thrown an interception right to someone. He flew over a couple throws. And here's the thing. Everybody was going crazy over when Brady starts yelling at people on the sideline. They're only down 7-3 at that point in the game. So I think you're totally right, Ryan, with the whole sky is falling. The team is 10-2. And how many times last year did people say, you got to jump off the bandwagon? Rex Ryan, apparently this is the worst Patriots team he's seen since last year's Patriots team, and that team made the Super Bowl as well. So I think you're totally right because you mentioned it. The Pats had about 10 guys that were sick. The Pats also, Brady was off, and Brady is allowed to be off in some games, but I definitely think that between the receivers, between the offensive line, and I guess I'll ask you, Ryan, what do you think was the biggest thing about the offense that ultimately held them back? Did you think it was the offensive line? Did you think it was Brady, or did you think it was the receivers? Because there's blame going around for all three.
Yeah, I would definitely put it on Brady and the receivers. I thought the offensive line did an okay job, but at the end of the day, it's just sustaining drives with this team where you can just see the frustration on Tom Brady and some of the disconnect between the receivers so far. I mean, you have them trying their best, but Edelman is not a true number one receiver, and then Sanu's not a true number two receiver, and you got them on this team where they're really missing that deep threat. I mean, they got all these slot receivers, but they have Dorsett can't really run the perfect route right now for that deep threat. So I would put it like the only flaw I really see with this team at this point, I know the defense didn't play as well as they have been playing, but the missing piece is the receivers with this team, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess to touch on that, do you think there's any answer that comes? Do you think there's anyone they acquire? Deion Sanders was actually on, and he guaranteed that the Pats were going to add some type of wide receiver. Some people have hinted that it might be Des Bryant. Some people have said Antonio Brown, but he continues to shoot himself in the foot every time he posts. Do you think there's any help coming in the wide receiving core, Ryan?
I hope there is. I'm not sure of how much stock to put into any of these rumors. If you just look at what the Patriots could have had, like they got rid of Demaryius Thomas, they got rid of the guy who just went to the Seahawks. His name escapes me right now. And then
Josh Gordon.
Oh yeah, Josh Gordon. So, and they could have Antonio Brown. So if you just look, if they have one of those three guys, they'd be in a much different spot right now. And if they were to get Des Bryant out of a forced retirement, so to say, like, I would be happy with any deep threat right now. Any guy that can cause separation for the offense and get open. So, yeah.
Do you think the Pats ultimately can scheme it up and do similar to what they did last year? Because you totally, when you bring that up, the whole sky is falling. Didn't it feel eerily similar almost to this point last year when Josh Gordon went down and, everybody said that the sky is falling? What do you think the Pats ultimately do? Do you think they can scheme it up? And I guess, what do you think when they go into a high-flying matchup like the Chiefs? I just don't know if we haven't seen them score that many points in a while. And you feel like you've got to score 30-plus points probably to stay in line with the Chiefs.
Oh, yeah. So against the Chiefs, I'm just hoping that I feel the Patriots are due for one of these weeks to just have an offensive juggernaut and just explode past 30 points and just put everything together, like start clicking with all the receivers. So I'm still waiting on that performance to arise. I'm really worried about the week after the Chiefs with the Bills. Like, who knows what's going to happen with the next? Like, the Bills are at 9-3. If we were to lose against the Bills and then have.
Okay, so you're thinking about the division now. Okay.
Like, I'm thinking about the division, and we can almost concede at this point that the Ravens might have the number one overall seed in the AFC. But I just want to make sure that the Patriots can retain that number 2 slot and get that first round bye.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping an eye definitely on the Chiefs and the Bills the following. So
no, I think you bring up a good point. People probably should not sleep on that Bills game because, I mean, I was honestly shocked at how well they were able to play against Dallas. Were you able to catch a decent amount of that game?
Yeah, I caught some, and I definitely. I mean, credit to them. Credit
I think
to
all the money was on. I feel like all the money was on Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That was probably the most shocking game of the week.
Yeah.
Because you thought Dallas was going to bounce back after their loss against the Pats. It was a home game for them. The Bills had never had much success against Dallas, so yeah, definitely a surprise.
I'll say this too. I think Josh Allen has made some considerable in-season progressions. You really see him like sitting back there, actually making some of his reads. I can remember the first time we played him this year, I was like, this guy's a quarterback? It felt like he just ran 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage every time he got it and was trying to make plays with his legs, whereas it seems like he's finding a little bit more of the balance. I mean, I was honestly shocked at some of the reads that he was making, some of the adjustments that they made against Dallas. It seems like he's improved. Have you noticed anything along those lines following the season?
Yeah, I would say among all, just his leadership this year, you can tell that a lot of his teammates are playing behind him, and also his composure and his poise. If you look at that one play where I think it might have been like a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, where he actually drops the ball from the center and then has the composure to do a dive over his center, over his guard, and then stay upright and spin around and get a few extra yards with a few of the Dallas defenders dragging on his legs. So, I mean, just his toughness and just his poise overall as a quarterback, just leading that team to a 9-3 record.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you this, Ryan. A lot of people are saying, does Tom Brady have the talent? You know, is it Tom Brady? Does he have the talent? Do you think the Patriots and Tom Brady, do you think there's enough talent there to win a Super Bowl? Or do you think that they're ultimately going to have to scheme things up and play a screen game? What do you think about the talent on the Patriots?
I think they do have enough talent. I know Tom Brady is long in the tooth, but if you just look at the Broncos last Super Bowl, Peyton Manning was a little bit less than a game manager. They had a great defense.
Right.
And if the Broncos were able to win that Super Bowl, I think the Pats, if they do end up facing the Ravens in the playoffs, they'll have a much better program towards stopping Lamar Jackson. And
yeah.
I know a lot of people think at this time of the year in December the Patriots have everything figured out, and it seems like this season not as much. But I always trust Belichick and Brady.
Yeah, and, until they lose one in the playoffs, it's so hard to, after what we've seen last year as Pats fans, until they lose one in the playoffs, it's so hard really to have that stance. And I know you talked about the stance that so many people have had. Oh, the Pats, the sky is falling. They're the worst team ever. But at the end of the day, they're 10-2, and you know they're looking pretty good. Ryan, I guess we'll leave you. I'll let you go on this. Like I said, to kind of start out, last time you had mentioned you thought the Pats might go undefeated. You thought that Brady, if they did, would walk off into the sunset. Now that they're 10-2, now that things don't look as glowy as maybe we thought they would, what do you think that Brady's going to do as far as retirement? Does he play past this year? Is this it? Does he go to another team? What do you think Brady does beyond this year?
The thing about Brady is he's such a competitor. You can never really cut him out of anything. So I can still see him, as long as he can play the position and he knows he's capable of playing quarterback for 16 games in the regular season and then more in the playoffs. I don't think this is the end for him. Even if they don't win the Super Bowl, or even if they do, I think he's still going to give it another run next year.
Yep, and if he gives it another run, do you think it's with the Patriots, or do you think he could potentially go somewhere else?
I think he's going to stay with the Patriots. I think it's such an honor to play for one team throughout your whole career, and there's only so few that can do it. And I know a lot of people are saying it would give him the chance of proving that he can win without Belichick, and also Belichick could win without Brady if they were to split. But I just don't see it happening. I think they have mutual respect for one another, and it's tough to leave the Patriots when you've sustained this much success over the 20-so-on years. So.
Yeah, it really would be really weird to see him in another jersey. And because he is so competitive, it's almost like I could almost see it happening if he doesn't get the offer that he feels like he should here. But it's definitely interesting. And we appreciate you calling in to talk it over with us, Rye. And we hope you have a good night out there in Quincy and stay warm. Appreciate you calling in tonight. So
thanks a lot. Love the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling. All right, take care. Now, after that Pats game, though, when the Pats lose, I think there's something that you have to say. Are the Pats the worst sports that we have ever seen when they lose? Is Tom Brady, is Bill Belichick, have you ever seen a less graceful loser? And I guess Bill Belichick not even giving the handshake to Bill O'Brien, the guy has absolutely kicked in Bill O'Brien's you-know-what over the last 6-7 years. He finally gets a win and can't even be bothered to shake his hand. That doesn't come off well. What did you think about that?
Yeah, no, not a very good loser. And yeah, he gave him the Mangini.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that these guys, and we have so many parties for the 300 wins that Belichick has, and he's the best ever, and he can't even give Bill O'Brien a handshake. I thought that was terrible, and the Pats, every time they lose, it always seems to be Belichick will talk twice as long after a win. He'll talk twice as short after a loss. He won't say a thing. And it's just for a team that's sustained so much success, it's like, come on, you can't give that guy a handshake. He's the younger brother that's never going to have success. You know, they beat you one time. You could even hear it in Deshaun Jackson. I just had to beat Brady one time, the GOAT. You know, it's like they're one, and the Pats just can't even be bothered to stick their hand out there and give a handshake. I think it doesn't look great, and if you're not a Pats fan, you can totally just see adding to those reasons of why people don't like the Patriots. But it's like, you can't give a handshake to Billy O'Brien. Didn't like it, but I think, you know, is anybody in better shape, though, to win the Super Bowl after Rex Ryan saying that the Pats are the worst team this is the worst Pats team he's ever seen? I think last year when he said that pretty much they turned things right around and went to the Super Bowl. So I almost feel like if there's anything to come out of this, it's Rex Ryan sounding off.
A little Rex Ryan magic.
Little Rex Ryan magic just to curse this team. It's almost like the Stephen A. Smith curse where every single year he can't get the finals winner correct. It's like a little bit of talk from Rex Ryan, and obviously I don't believe that that's going to turn things around, but my God. The Patriots, 10-2, is the sky falling, or are things just okay? Because last year, when they were at this point, we all thought the sky was falling. I can remember saying, there's nothing here. You've got James White on shorts. They had lost Josh Gordon. So, and they were able to scheme it up. The thing is, can they scheme it up twice with people knowing that this is a team that doesn't quite have the talent, and this is a team that's going to have to slow things down? So my point earlier, against the Kansas City Chiefs, you're going to have to score about 30 points to consider yourselves in that game, I would assume. I mean, the Chiefs, they don't have a great defense, but their offense is just absolutely incredible. And I think even if Pat Mahomes isn't even fully on, we've seen that they can put up, I mean, I think, what did they score, 38 this weekend or something? And it's just like they can pile up points in a hurry. We've seen them put up 24 points in the fourth quarter of last year's game. So the Patriots, I guess for you, Brian, do you see them being able to score something like 35? I mean, with what we've seen over the past 4 or 5 weeks, I don't feel like this is a team that can score 35.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And I don't think they can score that, and I don't know if they can slow things down enough to where you can ultimately beat a team like I think even though their defense is great, they could have a great defensive game and still give up 35 points to a team like the Chiefs. You know, you could have a couple interceptions, you could do this and that, but we've seen Pat Mahomes be able to throw, I think he threw 4 touchdowns in one quarter against Oakland this year. So he can just heat things up in a hurry, and he's got so many weapons. They have Tyreek Hill, and then his name escapes me, but the guy that they have behind him, they were basically looking to plan the season as if they weren't going to have Tyreek Hill. So they've got 2 of these burner fast guys that can just go down. Then you're going to try to double up somebody like that. You're going to double up a Tyreek Hill. What are you going to do with somebody like Sammy Watkins, who's 6'3", doesn't even really have a huge role in that offense, but when he starts running around, not being fully covered and covered one-on-one, and then they have a guy like Travis Kelce, you know, so do you put a guy like Stephon Gilmore on Kelce? Do you put him on Watkins? There's a lot of match, and then you've got LaShawn McCoy, who's been a guy that's been able to run all over New England for the past couple of years. So we've seen it plenty of times with the Bills, and there's a pretty good test coming up with Kansas City. There's definitely one with the Bills as well. But I think for the Pats to be able to score 35 points, I just don't see it. And I think it's going to be something where they've got to score. They're probably going to score like 24 points. I think if the way that the Pats win this game is like a 24-20. Somehow they stop the Chiefs from being able to score 4 or 5 touchdowns. But I don't ultimately see that happening, and I hardly ever predict any type of loss for the Pats, but honestly, I can't see them keeping up with the Kansas City offense. I don't know if you're out there and listening, and you know the number to call in is 617-702-2542. If you have any thoughts on that, I think the Pats, they're going to be a lot more set than the Max Kellermans of the world and the Stephen A. Smiths and the Rex Ryans of the world think. But I think that I don't think that they're going to do too well against the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. So we'll have to see. Do they have that type of talent? And are they the type of team that can make a solid run to the Super Bowl? They're 10-2, but we've seen them go against a team that everybody thinks is the absolute world beater in the Ravens. And I think that's a team where it's like we're putting so much stock into the Patriots. We also have to be careful to not put all the stock in the Ravens, because the Ravens are behind a quarterback that's played about 15 regular season games, had one really poor postseason game. So is this a guy that you could ultimately bottle up in the playoffs? I just don't think there's enough data on Lamar Jackson to be able to say, this guy is a top 5. I've heard so many rankings this week of everyone's top 5 quarterbacks. You wouldn't believe there's no top 5 that's lacking Lamar Jackson. And am I 100% sure that Lamar Jackson is a top 5 quarterback? I feel like I'm more sure that Tom Brady is a top 5 quarterback. It's just so that team, they're definitely scary. They can score in a number of different ways, but I'm not going to stamp them as everybody is stamping just a 49ers-Ravens Super Bowl, I feel like. And I don't know if the Ravens are necessarily – they rely so heavily on Lamar Jackson. Their whole game is based on Lamar Jackson, really. And if he's not good, if you can slow him down and make him think and make him make all of his reads before he can scurry off, and then you may have something there. And I just keep going back to the playoffs last year where you were almost asking, should we bring Joe Flacco, a guy that everybody is probably looking at like retire. And it's almost like, should they bring Joe Flacco in this game to save it? So that's one more thing we just have to think about is all these teams that are world beaters during the regular season, and what actually matters is the playoffs and executing there. And we saw what the Pats did last year, turning the system on its head, a passing league. They ran the ball, kept it away from their competitors, and it was a game where even against the Chiefs, they're just trying to hold on to the ball for about 40 minutes or so. And the Chiefs, in any minute that they got, were putting up points real quick. So the Patriots, for my money, they're going to have to scheme things up. They're going to have to get creative. But I don't know how creative you can get 2 years in a row. I think people know that the book is out on the Patriots, that you can double up Edelman, and you can put a safety on James White, and that can really slow things down pretty quickly. You don't have that all-world Gronk that can just go out there and catch passes easily. You don't have N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers on the same page with Brady. So it's almost like, what are they going to do here through the end of the year, and how are the Pats ultimately going to contend? There's a lot of questions when it comes to that, and I don't know if I'm fully sold on the Pats being able to either beat the Ravens, the Chiefs easily. These teams with these high-octane offenses, I just wonder if they're going to be able to go from this team that's been grinding out these 17-10 victories to being able to chalk up 35 points. And when was the last time that we looked back on a Patriots team and said, oh, geez, I don't know if this team can catch up on offense? We've always looked at the offense to be able to score 35 points like it's no problem. We always think a Tom Brady offense is 35 points. They lead the league in scoring every year without even trying. And this year, it's almost like the defense is providing as many points. So Tom Brady, who had a good game, I would say, in some ways, like Ryan had mentioned, they did do a lot in the air, passing, and they were able to move the ball quite a bit, a lot more than the Texans were. They just really weren't able to execute. And for me, one of the big takeaways was the Tom Brady rant. And we saw everybody slow that thing down. We saw everybody play it a million times over and reading his lips. And the fact that he was saying, we got to be faster, it almost felt fake. It felt like he was kind of like looking at the TV screen. It felt like he wasn't even necessarily, I don't even know if that was something that Tom Brady would say during a game. It's like, it seemed like even when they were down 7-3, that Tom Brady had kind of just said, hey, I can't work with these guys. And I don't know how acceptable that is from your franchise quarterback. We talked about for years and years how Brady just throws to the open guy. Now you've got to be part of the club. You got to be a Mohamed Sanu. You've got to be a little bit older to be able to get the trust of a guy like Brady. And whether you're running wide open and you're N'Keal Harry or Jacoby Myers, you're probably not going to get that ball. You're covered by a couple guys, and you're Edelman. I mean, here's the thing. All these guys have been dropping balls, but Edelman actually leads the league in drops. He hasn't left the circle. So has Tom Brady just been able to keep up with the guys that he's been used to passing to over the past few years? Has some of the fact that he doesn't show up to the full training camps anymore, is this part of not being able to get on the page with some of the young guys? Does this start to unearth some problems down the road where you're looking at it and the Pats could really use a guy like N'Keal Harry or a guy like Jacoby Myers to be locked into this offense, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. So that's pretty much what we're talking about with the Patriots, and they're going to have to scheme things up and get creative. And in a week against the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm really wondering how they're going to be able to put those points up. So we get back to the NBA for just a little bit, and I've got to say this. The Western Conference Player of the Week, it's a sham. Don't ever look at it. Don't pay any attention to it. Carmelo Anthony was the Western Conference Player of the Week. Okay? Now, I don't just say this because I hate Carmelo Anthony, but they were 3-0. They play 3 games, win 3 games. I mean, how many teams have won 3 games in a week this season? Carmelo averaged 22 points, 7 rebounds. Okay? You want to know what the Eastern Conference Player of the Week averaged? That was Giannis Antetokounmpo. He averaged 38 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists. So you could literally pick, close your eyes and touch 15 guys on top. You just pull the top 15 guys in the Western Conference, and they all had better weeks than Carmelo Anthony did. So I can't understand for the life of me what this whole Carmelo Anthony is like. A year ago, everybody was ready to crucify Carmelo Anthony. He doesn't work on Oklahoma City. He doesn't work on the Rockets. He's done. Now he comes back on the Blazers. He plays 6 games. He's averaging 17 points. It seems like he actually plays within the flow of the offense. And everybody loves this guy. So it's like Carmelo Anthony, I don't even recognize him. 17 points a game, 7 boards. He's shooting 46% from the field and 37% from 3. So he's got good shooting numbers all across the table. But my God, he was not the Western Conference Player of the Week. James Harden scored 60 points in a game and played 3 quarters. He's averaging 38.9 points a game on the season. Okay? So 22.3, I wasn't really too impressed from my Western Conference Player of the Week. All right? Now, kudos to Carmelo. He's looked great on his comeback, and he's definitely playing differently than he had before. But my God, 22 points, and this is the Western Conference Player of the Week. How many guys on the Celtics this week? Kemba Walker averaged more points than that. Jason Tatum averaged more points than that. Jaylen Brown averaged more points than that. These guys you're not even talking about potentially being the Player of the Week. So, for me, the Western Conference Player of the Week is an absolute sham, not paying any more attention to it. Now, when we talk about Jaylen Brown, he's arguably been the most consistent player for the Celtics this year, and he's been a lot more aggressive than he has been in the past, and he's definitely been looking for his shot. But some of the questions that I was trying to get at is, I wonder if he's a consistent 20-point scorer in this league, and I wonder what happens when Gordon Hayward comes back. Because it seems like somebody's going to go to the bench. It's going to either be Jaylen or it's going to be our MVP, Marcus Smart, if you're listening to Kyle. So one of those guys is going to go to the bench. And for my money, I'm assuming that because of the fact that Marcus Smart doesn't need to shoot as much, I'm going to assume that he stays in the starting lineup. So I wonder how things happen for Jaylen, and I wonder if that starts to break things apart. I mean, he's been getting so many minutes, been doing so well. And last year, he was only 13 points a game in his third year. This year, he's all the way up to like 19.3. And I just wonder if this is something that's a short streak or something that's going to be sustained. And I go to a guy like Brandon Ingram, who's in New Orleans, who's averaging 25.5 points a game. And some people say, well, you know, Jalen's on a team that is doing pretty well. He's not going to necessarily get all the shots. But I don't know if Jalen would even be averaging 25.5 points a game if he was on the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't know if he is actually that offensively polished. And he kind of just feels like someone to me that is playing in an above-average season. I don't know if he's necessarily that third guy that you want to build around. For the money that they gave him and for the elevation that he needs to take, I don't know if he's necessarily that third guy on a championship team. I think he might be closer to that fourth. Now, if you have four guys that score 20 points, as we talked about earlier, you're looking at a pretty good situation. You're talking about teams like the Detroit Pistons and, obviously the Golden State Warriors. But aside from that, you really can't remember another foursome that was able to put up 80 points across them. So what they've been doing has been absolutely incredible, but I just wonder how aggressive Jaylen Brown stays. I wonder how solid he is when Hayward comes back, and I wonder what it's like to ease him in, because you heard rumors of it last year that some guys got upset that Hayward was getting those types of minutes when he hadn't necessarily earned it. You wonder if that might be any source of friction this year. So the Celtics also facing a couple interesting matchups at home in their next two. Going against the Miami Heat, that's got a combo of Jimmy Butler and youth. They've got Bam Adebayo. They've got Kendrick Nunn, who's been an outstanding rookie. And they're ranked fourth in the East. And they also go against a Nuggets team this week on Friday that's number one in the NBA in defense. So we should see a lot on this homestand. We've got two pretty good games. A Miami Heat team that has been on the top of the Eastern Conference, as well as a Nuggets team that's been number two in the Western Conference, really having one of the better pick-and-roll combos. They also have Paul Millsap, who's absolutely turning back the clock and has also shredded the Celtics over his career. So, you've got some good things there. Now, I guess when I look at a couple of things in terms of the NBA, we're having some absolutely insane stats. And James Harden, I always crap on this guy, but I think it's time that I actually give him a little bit of kudos. 60 points in 3 quarters. This guy already has the record for most threes in isolation, as well as most 4-point plays ever. So this is a guy that's really been able to draw the foul this year. He's scoring 38.9 points a game, scored 60 through 3 quarters. And I couldn't even believe that they decided to take him out in the middle of that game or 3 quarters into it. I think you absolutely have to shoot for it. But James Harden with an absolutely hell of a year. You've got him. You've got Giannis, Luka, Trae Young. You've got a ton of MVP candidates so far this year. You can even go into your Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James. And I think there's a couple standout through the first quarter, a couple standout awards. Most improved player, Fred VanVleet absolutely has to be it. He's averaging 18.6 points a game. He's playing the most minutes in the NBA. He's really brought up his 3-point shooting. So he's a guy who's gone from like 10 points, 4 assists to about 18 points and 7.5 assists. My best 6 man has got to be Montrezl Harrell. I mean, he's averaging like 18 and 8 off the bench, and I don't see anybody being able to come near that. And then you've got John Morant. He just sustained an injury, but he's already played 17 games. He's averaging 18 points, 3 rebounds, 6.5 assists. Kind of having that year that's, we've seen some guys put out some really big rookie years, but kind of having a year that reminds me almost of the talent that Vince Carter showed when he was a rookie. That high scoring, 18.6. Ja Morant, high flyer. Obviously a different position than Vince Carter, but a guy that really looks like he's jumping off a trampoline, and a guy that is averaging 18.6 points a game out of the gate as a rookie. So that's what I'm wrapping up for my my NBA awards, and that's going to wrap it up for us here on Open Season. For Brian Murphy, I'm Billy Allen. We hope you all stay warm, and we'll catch you next week.
I'm just not sure that Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate I've got Brian Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a championship defense. And Mitch, I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you thought you were going to get Zion, that's your bad.